this to order, or call our meeting to order at 5 o'clock. My name is Kelly McIntosh, and I am the chair of the North Mason Regional Fire Authority Commissioner Board. My commissioners are Britt Quigley, Shelby Blackwell, Tom Wampole, Bev Boss-Petraeus, who's coming in via Skype, and we have Paul Severson, who is back in our audience. I just saw him a minute ago. Right behind. And Dan Kewish just walked in the door also. I'd like to thank you all for coming this evening. I don't want to take up too much time. It's nice to see this much interest and participation. We're very, very early in this process. There's going to be a presentation with lots of some information. A lot of times we may just say, hey, you don't know yet. But I do appreciate you all coming out this evening. We have a sign-in sheet and a comment card, email. This is just kind of the first step as we introduce ourselves into this process. And I'll turn it over to Central Mason's Tom Taylor.
Hi, I'm Chairman of the Central Mason Fire Department. This is Y'all Rickey, one of the commissioners, and Tom Nevers, the other commissioners, and Chief McCurran on the end, and Chief Patty is back in the back, raising his hand, and hiding back. So, as you said, there's the comment cards back there, but there's a questions page too. If you have some questions, write the questions down and leave those with us. But if you want to be emailed information as we go along, leave your email address, and we're going to put them in a big group and send out the email information.
And I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over. Is it Chief Bakken or Chief McCurran who's presenting first? I know that we've got presentations from both board and staff.
Okay. Well, good evening. You know, this is one of those processes. I'm going to run about half of it, and Bo's got another half of it. So we're going to run through some things and talk about not so much RFA, but regionalization. And if everybody can see that right up there, you can see what we've got is just a definition of what a regionalization is all about. For the political administrative process where regions emerge, relevant units to analysis. So it's the Reader's Digest version of what regionalization is all about. Here's some examples of regionalizations that currently you exist today, and you hear about it in its homeland security regions. Oops, they warned me not to touch the screen. Homeland security, also regional hospital districts, multi-care, and so those are kind of some examples that you folks all know about regionalizations today and as they work. Other examples, currently right now in our own entities we use what's called Northwest Region EMS protocols, Timberland Library is regional, and of course over in Olympia Lacey and Tumwater, they have the Lock Sewer Company. Again, that all forms what we call regionalizations if you do that. I like that wall. That worked pretty well. How's you two? Regional approach, obviously, in order for today, economic conditions, laws, limiting tax revenues, haven't moved many in that direction. Regional approaches are the way to go. I mean, obviously, everything we look at today is a regional approach as we get through there. Grant funding. When we all started writing grants, and Bo can tell you the same thing, when we applied in the last couple of years for grants, every other question was, is this a regional grant? Other fire districts involved or anything else with that, and if you say yes, obviously it moves you higher up on the pecking order when it comes to regional grants. And so certainly grant funding is certainly being reduced if you're not doing a regional approach to that, and it lowers yourself down to that. In Mason County, what do we currently have? If you remember way back when, we actually took two. We took ShellCom and FireCom, and we became MaceCom back in right around, and this has almost been 5, 6, 7 years ago we did that. And why did we do that? Because we knew a CAD system was going to cost us $100,000. Currently, we have a regional fire investigation team, and that's really what started this talking process. Chief Patty and Chief Cooper were talking about fire investigations with Jeremy, and they started talking more, and so it really built into some things as we started talking along the way. Regionalization is nothing new to Mason County. Currently, the Mason County Recruit School, and I think, Greg, we talked about it, it's been 30 years maybe? How long's the Mason County Recruit School been around? Long, long time. And so we've already been regionalized for that. And the reason for that, obviously, is state funding for basic training. That same topic came up today at the legislative meeting that several of us were at, and it talked about that basic training is the same funds today that it was back then in the start. Same exact funding. So, again, regionalization to that. Some other grants that we've received here, obviously the county received a radio grant that all the fire services is enjoying. We've got some things going on with our EOC downtown and some DOE things. So those again are all regional approaches to what's happening with regionalization. So let's look at the definition of an RFA, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chief Hawkins. Remember, an RFA is a municipal corporate which allows fire districts, municipalities, city departments, tribal nations, and join together provisions. And so you can kind of see that an RFA combines fire districts and there's all kinds of things. And as you hear legislatively, RFA keeps changing all the time. There's legislation that's currently going on as we speak that changes things. There's a couple omnibus bills out there as they relate to RFAs. But again, it's regionalization and it's a wave of the future. I think you're on.
Boy, that was quick. Perfect.
Kelly said brief, so we moved right through it.
We met our mandate. My name is Bo Bach, and I work for the North Mesa Regional Fire Authority. And regionalization is nothing new to us. We went through this process, and it was interesting because it was a meeting that looks exactly like the one we have here that we had at the Shelton Library about 3 years ago. Some of you were there for that. And regionalization is something, it's a concept that started as far as fire protection, started back in 2004. And it started back in 2004 because what they were finding was fire districts are all governed by one set of laws. It created back in the, I want to say, late 40s, early 50s. And what they found is that these laws that pertain to these fire districts, and whether it be in Snohomish County Fire District 1, which serves a population of 300,000, or if you work in Mason County Fire District 6, 10, 11, smaller fire districts, the same set of laws apply. And what they said with regionalization, and looking at regionalization, why don't you take local control and tailor your fire and emergency services at a regional level to provide a good level of service at the regional level. And so there's not a lot of regional fire authorities are out there. The state gave us, Washington State gave us the ability to put together regional fire authorities back in 2004. And we were only the 8th fire authority that have come together. I believe that there's been a 9th over in Eastern Washington that's come together. So there has been a lot of people that have looked at the concept, but not a lot of people that have pulled it off. I definitely don't want to speak for my board, but looking at my board, I see a makeup of Tahuya fire commissioners, I see a makeup of Belfair fire commissioners, and I think that as a group we can sit there and say that the result of regionalization between Tahuya and Belfair has been astronomical. The results that we've seen have far exceeded our expectations. We see Belfair commissioners hugging Tahuya commissioners. I promise you would not have seen that about 3 years ago. But there has been a lot of hugging going on. But there's a lot more benefits than that. We're getting more people on scene faster. We're getting the calls faster. We're augmenting programs. We've eliminated duplication. A lot of the same things we're going to be looking at in this process as well. So we look at, when we look at overall, I mean, the value that we provide for our communities. What is very interesting and neat and cool about working in the fire service is that we are trusted like any other form of government. People sit there and say, hey, my front door is open, come on in, help me out. There's no other form of government that has allowed that type of access. But with that comes a lot of trust, and we've got to value that trust that's out there. And I know that we, in both fire districts and the fire authority, do not take that for granted. I'm going to check this out. So, but the other thing that we have in common is that our values, I mean, obviously if you look at our value statement, they might be somewhat different between the North Mason Regional Fire Authority and Central Mason Fire EMS. But if you look at it, I mean, the values are fairly in line with one another, and I think it really starts as a good context as to where to start the conversation if we're going to bring the two entities together. The protection of lives and protection of lives and property is the most important thing to us. Our members, you see a lot of folks that are in uniform here tonight, they have a very vested interest in what's happening here, but they're our most important resource. We take safety, we take effectiveness, we take ability to respond, we take that, whatever you want to call it now, but we take that very, very seriously. We value that highly. We also value public trust. We know that it takes 20, 25 years, 30 years to build up public trust, and we can blow it in about 5 minutes with doing something really stupid out there. We also want our citizens out there to take pride in the organization. We like being on the front page of the paper for good stories and not for bad. We like being out there delivering fantastic quality care that you tell your neighbor about when it's delivered. We want to be a valued partner out there in the community. And then I think that we both can say that collaboration is extremely important to us. I mean, we are, by the means of fire districts and size of fire districts, we're not large, we're not huge. We're of average size, I would say, maybe a little below average. But that means we have limited resources, we have limited financial resources, we have limited personnel. And working together augments and synergizes those two resource capabilities coming together. And to not look at that, which we have not done between our two districts in some time, is foolish in my opinion. So if you look at, I won't go through the entire list, but if you look at, and this is not a comprehensive list, but if you look at, and I'm talking specifically about Central Mason Fire and EMS, if you look at the services they provide, it goes well beyond just responding to medical calls and putting out fires. Hazardous materials, community outreach, fire inspections, hazard mitigation, child fire safety, health monitoring, and I could probably fill 4 or 5 slides with the different things that Central Mason does. It's amazing what they do day in and day out. And so then when I flip to the next slide, which shows you what the Fire Authority does, we do the exact same thing verbatim. There's no sense of recreating that slide. Yet we do it completely independent from one another. And it does not, for the life of me, with the Fire Authority now and Fire District 2 for 20 years, why we do it independently and on our own, it doesn't make any sense to me. It hasn't for some time. Coming together, working together makes much more sense, and it makes these programs that we both do for our citizens and individual communities, it makes it that much stronger. So hopefully, there's going to be a lot of different opinions. Is it a good idea to come together? Isn't it? What does it mean to me? What doesn't it mean to me? I mean, there's a lot of different thoughts and ideas that are going to be in the room. It's going to be a mixed bag. But hopefully, we can start the conversation with what are some of the things that we can agree on. And I'm hoping that there is a degree of unity behind the fact that government, I don't mean just fire service, but government in general, working together is better for the citizens of Mason County. When we work fractured and we work apart, we see destruction and we see inefficiency across the board. I would hope that working together just at any level of government makes more sense and better for the folks that are in Mason County. And also, too, we all have an interest in the process. I don't think the commissioner's interest in how this goes down, citizens' interests, neighboring fire districts, personnel, volunteers, everybody has a little bit different interest, but we all have an interest. Otherwise, we wouldn't be up here on a Tuesday night at 5 o'clock when we could be at home doing something else, but we all have a vested interest in the process. And with that vested interest, it's change, and change is extremely difficult. And when we talk about change, when we get into the numerical system for fire districts, some people know this fact, some people don't. When they started in Mason County, the way we got our numbers, when you talk about District 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, it was based on when you incorporated. So District 1 in Hoodsport was the first to incorporate. This was about the mid-40s. District 2 was right behind it in 46. District 5 was right early 50s. So the districts have been around a long, long time, but we have not worked together and not worked very well for a long, long time. So when you're sitting there and saying, hey, we've been at each other's throats in many situations, in many cases, and now we're looking at working together, that's a significant amount of change. And with change comes discomfort, with change comes frustration, fear, all the stuff that we just went through. And the reason why we know it is we went through it with the Regional Fire Authority. And a lot of the comments we're going to hear tonight, a lot of the thoughts we're going to hear tonight are going to be identical to what we went through at the regional library down in North Mason. But I'm here to tell you, on the backside of it, I know we're reaping the benefits of going through that process. So this is going to be the most difficult question or process that we're going to go through, is that there's a million questions about this process. How do the finances work? What's the governing structure look like? What station am I going to work at? How many volunteers are we going to bring on? And the answer is right there, we don't know. We're just looking to get underway with an exploratory process to make, does this make sense? We are right now looking at it from a 100,000-foot level, and we're looking at it from a very conceptual level. And what's frustrating to me is I think conceptually this idea has made sense since 1946, about the same time that we incorporated. And yet we're just fast forwarding about 60 years and now finally getting underway 70 years and actually taking a look at it. But that's where we're at tonight. Many of the questions that you have are very good questions. That's why we want to get them written down. These are issues that we are going to tackle over the next weeks, days, months, years, hopefully not that long, but that we need to get answers to. And we don't have them yet. And so You know, what's the staffing levels look like? We don't know. What do the finances look like? We don't know. A lot of things that we don't know, but we're going to get answers to, and we're going to make sure that it's a very smart-driven process before we move forward. But what we're asking for, and I think it's the next slide, is actually it's the outcomes. Is when we're looking at it from the conceptual level, it's really what outcomes we're trying to get out of this. I mean, yes, we're going to answer all those questions we talked about, but we're also going to be looking at, you know, how do we enhance the public safety levels? We talked about ourselves being kind of medium-sized agencies. But how is it that we can work together? And we did this with the Tahuya Fire Department, but how do we work together to enhance the services that both agencies provide? And there is a way to do that, I'm confident. And how do we talked about how we are doing a set of programs up here in the north end. Central Mason's doing a set of programs. We're doing them and we're duplicating efforts over and over and over again. He's working as a fire chief on the exact same problems that I'm working on as a fire chief up here in the north end. We're doing it, duplicating over and over again. Well, that was scary. But hopefully we can eliminate that waste and duplication and put those, and that's one of the things we did with Tahuya, is to sit there and say, let's eliminate that duplication and put that effort back into getting people on people's front doorstep, getting them the help they need when they call 911, because ultimately that's what this is all about. We want to maximize the use of limited personnel, equipment, and resources that we have. We only have so much. You know, and it's not increasing on a daily basis. I wish it was. If anything, it's decreasing. With the number of volunteers decreasing, with the amount of financial resources decreasing. We've got to make more with less, and we can do that working together. We're not going to be able to do that continuing to work far apart from one another. We talked about aligning and synergizing our programs. And really the next thing is that this is my personal opinion, not anybody else's, but the two agencies really not getting along for the good period, about 7 years, has set us back considerably. When you look at neighboring agencies in Kitsap County, or Thurston County, or Pierce County, they're quite a ways ahead of us in technology and working together in the synergistic concept. This is nothing new that we're reinventing here in Mason County, but the fact that we have always disagreed in many very important aspects of emergency services has set us back significantly. And I think that working together is really taking that next step for emergency services in Mason County. So again, you know, why are we here tonight? This is back to the board and talking to the board. We obviously want to recognize that both agencies, I think, do a phenomenal job with protecting their community. The number of calls that are run, the amount of attention and detail that is given, the quality of service, I mean, that goes without question. And that needs to be recognized throughout this process. But what we also want to do is we want to sit there and want to plan, and we want to start moving forward with the conceptual ideas that we think have merit in bringing the two agencies together and going through that concerns and fear of potential change, but for a better organization altogether. And of course, we want to explore the benefits of a regional approach. You know, again, having gone through this with Tahuya, the regional approach works. And, you know, we talked to a lot of our counterparts in Thurston County and Whatcom County who had formed fire authorities, and they were, you know, just, raving about the benefits. And now I see what they're talking about. We're only a year and a half in, but the benefits are significantly there. And to not sit there and look at that at a more expanded level, I think would be negligent. But that's just my own personal opinion. So, turning back to the board here, when him and I are coming to the board and we're bringing this conceptual idea back to the board, what we're not looking for is yes on coming together. That's not the purpose of tonight. It's not to sit there and say, yes, let's do this, and yes, we've got every question answered. We're not even close to that. What we're hoping for, though, is do we have some type of conceptual agreement that this might make sense, and that it would make sense to continue exploring with the planning process and looking at this further, much like we did with the Regional Fire Authority. We went through a year-long, almost a year-and-a-half-long planning process to get the questions answered that I know many people have here tonight. And of course, I threw this in just you know, having a public steering committee process that would help us and guide us throughout this particular process. You know, and is there any board guidance? And I know we're going to open it up for board discussion here after the presentation, but does the board have any guidance? If yes, in moving forward in the exploration process, what is that guidance in moving forward? And this is probably back from the board to us, who've been really doing most of the discussion so far. Is there something that we're missing? I know that we're at a very conceptual level, but is there somewhere where we've got our blinders on, or somewhere where we're not focusing where we should be in any direction back from the board on that particular matter? So you can tell it's not very often. I've again been doing this 20 years. It's not very often that you fill up a room with about 75 people. It really speaks to the historic nature of what we're doing. It is very, very. I mean, we're breaking some boundaries. I mean, I think the differences and the disagreements between our two districts are historic, and the process to bridge and get over those is just as historic. Will we be successful? I'm hoping so. I'm confident we will be. But nonetheless, to even be in this room and having this conversation is very historic. And then with that, I'll shut up and sit down. But just see the board has. Okay.
I just want the public to know that we've had a few meetings already just between, I have met with Commissioner Taylor here with the administration. And again, they've just been some very, you know, I don't want to say superficial, but they've just been some immediate and conversations to talk about where would we go from here, what would this look like, what are the big issues that we need to attack. One of the things that we did want to make sure of when we started this endeavor is to make sure that there is some very open lines of communication, excuse me, that there is a process, there's integrity to that process, and that we do, as we go through this, make this process transparent to the public. We understand as a board of commissioners from both districts that transparency is very important. We understand that there is a lot of significant issues to address. And again, this evening, we're not going to be able to address all of those issues, but I did want to assure the public that as we go through this, that the process will be very open, which is why we're asking for input not only from our neighboring districts and fire chiefs, but from the citizens themselves, because at the end of the day, we understand that these are your dollars, this is your service, this is your fire service, and I think that that's vitally important that be at the forefront of what can this process give back to the community, both to North Mason and to Central. And that's, you know, that one, I want that to be a very, very clear issue. Our board has a lot of years of experience. I've been on this board almost 15 years, and I think since I've been on our board, unfortunately, we've probably only met a couple of times with Central Mason when they were Legacy District 5, and so I really do look forward to going through this process. One of my goals in having this meeting this evening is not only to present, you know, whatever information we could and answer some questions that we're able to this evening, but for have our boards to meet. I've been working with my board for many years, and now having the opportunity to join with District 8 and have us be an RFA and have the benefit of their commissioners. But I know that some of my commissioners have not had the opportunity to meet and meet with with Central Mason. So I would open it up to our fellow commissioners if there are any questions conceptually, what are things that need to be addressed, and then to the public. And I'm going to let one of the chiefs, actually, you guys can, you know, facilitate that. You have nothing?
Yeah. I would just encourage people who want to get regular updates, should this discussion go forward, to be sure and sign up on the email list that's going around. Because I think one of the things that, yeah, that's great, okay. So one of the things that happened well in the consolidation with District 8 is there were regular detailed updates as well as meetings that came out so the public, all citizens could know where we were in the process. And if it happened to be a community meeting or a citizen advisory committee meeting, or some other kind of meeting, they could ask questions. So this two-way communication is very important, and that's one way it happens is through an email list. And some of you might not be on that list right now, so I encourage you to include yourself.
Are there any comments or questions from you folks at all, or anything that you would like to present to us or have us know?
Well, I have just a quick question. What's the process on selecting an advisory committee?
In terms of advisory, I think what we have been doing is creating steering committees. At this point in time, it's just been Tom Taylor and I who have met. We understand that having probably a commissioner-driven steering committee would be important. The one thing for sure, because we have 5 commissioners, 6 commissioners, and you have 3, is that you would make, if there is work being done, you just need to make sure that you don't violate the public open meeting by having 2 there. Whether you assign 2 and then have one be an alternate, and so if somebody was not available, that you would have to stand in. But I think it's from your own board if you want to select somebody. I don't think we have a necessarily process.
Would these steering committee members just be board members, or would be members at large from the community?
It's my understanding from just a previous meeting that we had that it would be a mixture of both having board, staff, union, volunteer, citizen, so that there's kind of a real cross-cut and input of everybody, because everyone's a stakeholder at this.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions from our board here?
I don't have any questions.
Anything else from Central? If not, I'll go ahead and change it.
Yes, I would like to hear some questions or comments from the audience.
And I was going
What they
to,
have to say.
yep, I was going to turn that over to, if the chiefs want to facilitate that from the audience.
I guess, having come from Pierce County, I don't understand why we have not come together prior to this, and we've all seen it coming. We live out on Karstein Island. We have no service out there. Why haven't you come together? Why haven't you presented more to us? It is not understandable to me, and yet this process has been going on around the state for a very long time. So I just don't understand that. So if someone could kind of speak to that for me?
You want to go ahead?
Me, you, I can.
So you're right. This process has been going on for some time, and it is. This is me speaking. I'm not speaking for the board. It is embarrassing how our districts have gotten along with it. Embarrassing. You have watched turf protection. You have watched political protection. You have watched, and I'm talking 70 years worth. And this, when I have that slide, I don't know if it's up there. You know, that's the historic portion. We're putting all that aside and need to. That we need to get over what are protecting individual self-interest for folks on Karstein Island, folks in Duluth, folks in Belfast. It is troublesome that it's taken us this long, but we are here. And that's where I think that the energy is in getting this solved. But you're right, this is not a brand new concept. Working together is, and not even in the fire service, I mean, just get the government as a whole. But there are, and especially in a rural community like ours, I mean, it's even more important to work together instead of. One of the things that I put out there is, you know, I'm trying to compare Mason County against others. Is you take Kitsap County that protects 255,000 people. Mason County is roughly 65,000 people. Kitsap County has gone through this exact same process and did so about 20 years ago. And they do it with, I want to say, 5 fire districts in a city. They do it with a very limited number. In Mason County, we do it with, I believe, 14 different fire districts. All individual, all scattered, all working individually. And the inefficiency is pretty significant. It's gotten us in a lot of troubles. But I think that we're really seeing a corner being turned, and maybe it's here tonight and in other areas of the county, where working apart and for personal self-interest doesn't benefit the folks that we're out there to serve. So that's my personal, if that helps at all.
And I would piggyback on that because is the fact that for a lot of folks, you know, I work with the other commissioners in the other districts. I think many of them want to be progressive and come to the table with that. But then also there's the mindset, we have volunteer fire districts, and I think that you become a historical concept of this is my area, my community, and if most of them are primarily volunteer and not combination or paid, they look at as we're doing okay as we are. And maybe that doesn't apply to me, and maybe that's something that is in the future. So it's actually understanding that it's the here and now. And I think what we're seeing with a lot of the requirements, administrative requirements, public records, open government requirement, now many of those fire districts are recognizing that they're so limited. They're not simply responding to fire, simply responding to emergency needs. They have a lot of administrative needs that are greater than what any of their volunteer capacity has. So now is the time for many of those, not just our districts, but many of them are recognizing that there's a greater good to coming together, and it's overcoming that hump of just change, of it is applicable to me now. It's not something I need to think about in the future. And I think that that's what's held people back of, well, we're okay for right now. We're managing instead of what can we do more. And that's, I think we're at a change and transition.
It is well.
Is there any talk about true merger, or is it to maintain this regional fire authority and everybody has their own budgets? Where are we going? Is there another end to this? How this ways further?
I think that would be, like I said, I don't think that's something we can answer tonight. I think what we would have to look at is, what are the various models that, I mean, coming together means that you can't have, two parallel budgets. It means that you do need to find some mechanism that you are under one financial umbrella. But I wouldn't even step into what does that look like tonight. It is something that's probably going to be at the forefront of discussions in the steering committees as we go through the process of saying what is that, what model works best in order to ensure that there's, financial responsibility to everybody.
How would this proposed merger impact neighboring districts, say District 3, for example?
Go ahead and turn that over.
Oh, boy. It would, to tell you the truth, this is me talking again. What I would hope is that we have, so District 2 and 5, I think, is a prime example of districts that have a difficult time working together. And him and I have joked that if our two districts work together and can improve that relationship, any relationship can improve throughout any of the 14 districts in Mason County. And that's what I would hope that would come out of this, is that instead of fighting and bickering and not getting along, and that turf protection that we've talked about that has been paramount in our district for many, many years, goes away, not just in our agency, but in most of Mason County, about all of Mason County, and to the benefit of neighboring districts. What does it mean tangible as far as service and response times? I don't know. That's what we're going to find out in time. But I think that instead of trying to protect our own self-interest, which we've done plenty of over the years, it's really looking at the greater good, the Harstein Island folks, the folks in Grapeview, or the folks in other parts of the county. That's ultimately what's important. So I know I'm kind of beating around the bush a little bit, but it's improvement is the word I want to use.
I think if this is something that we could be successful in, done properly, done responsibly, that I think it would be a greater good for fire service. Just as Kitsap County has worked very hard to take a multitude of fire districts and combine them, reduce duplication, and have greater resources, I think that it would be better for those neighboring fire districts. I think it would actually enhance fire service throughout the. I think this could possibly change fire service throughout all of Mason County.
It seems like making that clear is what will help a lot of the skepticism and fear and the desire for turf protection and that sort of thing. And people don't really know how this is going to impact them, and they think that things are nice the way they are, so let's just stay the course. And the other thing I was curious about was what was sort of the determining factors for you guys to merge. What really tipped the scale for you to get together?
Well, a couple things, and I think that it was on one of the slides, and I know it seems probably pretty minor, but we had a pretty, Dave Saul's in the audience, please stand up, I'm going to make you give a presentation on this, but what I mean by this is Dave's our formal county fire marshal and then worked for Central Mason for quite a while. And I think that Dave and I can probably say the same is that Mason County really struggled when it came to providing fire marshal services in Mason County, because it was done solely by the county. Whether it be lack of communication, lack of working together, the county is in the fire business. We weren't putting arsonists away, we weren't investigating fires. I mean, the list went on and on. And so what we did, and this was probably, about 5 years ago, is the two lead agencies, the two largest agencies that had fire inspection staff and the experience to go out there and do it, got together, worked together. I mean, that was historic. And said, let's do this together to the betterment of all of Mason County. And right now, our two districts, with the help of some other neighboring fire districts as well, but we now provide fire marshal and fire investigation services for all of Mason County. And so when we started that process, it really led to, well, if we can do better in this area, why are we stopping here? And on and on. And that's, if I really look back at a tipping point, that's one that really sticks out in my mind.
Thanks.
Suggestion as far as the steering committee goes. Okay, you've got District 3 and you've got District 6, I don't know, all the contingent districts that touch either one ought to have at least one representative on that committee, just not that they're negotiating, just that they're learning. Then they can feed back to their districts whether this is something that they want or don't want.
So no.
Sir, in front you had a question?
Yes, District 5 has common boundaries with a lot of these other 12 fire districts, and therefore they have interlocal agreements or contracts for services. And then there's one of them, the City of Shelton, and there's another organization that's Medic One. How do you see these contracts in the end, if you two do merge, would they be renegotiated or honored, or what would happen there?
So we probably, there's a two-part answer. One is that you could kick back and say, hey, we don't know yet, we're going to investigate that. What we went through in the Regional Fire Authority process is we found that there were some same thing. In the two districts, there were some good contracts and bad. And I shouldn't say bad, some that weren't as advantageous and can definitely be improved upon. And when the Regional Fire Authority came together, we assumed all those contracts, as written. They came into the territory and they came and we took them as written. But one of the mandates from the Board of Fire Commissioners, the new Fire Board of Commissioners, was to go through and evaluate every single one of those. Is it meeting our needs? Is it in the best interest? And we're still in that process. I mean, we're only a year and a half into this RFA. And we were looking at a meeting hall rental process down in Bowie. It seems pretty minor. It was a little lower on the priority list, but we're going through all of those. And I would assume, and I'm making an assumption here, that the same process would happen here where those contracts are assumed by the new put-together organization, and that work would go in a systematic order to reevaluate those. And not with the intent to, maliciously renegotiate or try to leverage, but just to really figure out, is this fair for all parties involved? That's my thought.
Yeah, the intent's not to be exclusive of anybody, the intent is to be inclusive. We don't want to not provide service in certain areas, we want to provide service to everyone. Like Kelly, I've been on this board for Central Mason board for about 15 years myself, and I can attest to some of the background hasn't been too good. But right now, we have two chiefs, one at each end of these tables, and these commissioners that are pretty much in agreement that we can do this. This can be a great benefit for us, and I just kind of see all of the tumbler locks as lined up. Don't really know animosities at all. I've talked to Bo several times, and I have complete 100% trust in what he's got going on, and same with Kelly and the other commissioners there. Dell's just came on the board, but he's got about 12 years' experience. He had a 2-year layoff or 3-year layoff.
6-year layoff.
6-year layoff. He's old quick. But he had about 12 years' experience on this board before he came back this time. And Tom's got a couple years' experience, but he's always been very, very active in the community around Mason Lake. He knows that area very well, so I think there's nothing but a plus here for us.
Any other questions, concerns, ideas?
I want to know how much discussion has taken place about who's going to take charge, who's going to be the intermediary between all the different voices. Is there some kind of a structure to the agency that's been kicked around?
In terms, we're at the very beginning, kind of the initial stages of creating a steering committee and participants from each one of those stakeholder groups. Part of our communication models that we looked at when we started notifying folks was looking at, who needs to be, who do we need to be talking to? Because really, when you look at the fire district, it impacts a lot of different groups, public and private entities, and so the notification of that. And then we're creating that steering committee, and then that steering committee would be the voice of this process. And then in terms of, right now the fire chiefs are kind of the primary voice of communicating between the two groups, but obviously there will be those committee of individuals, and then passing that information and creating kind of a timeline in which, we would be meeting with the community to report back, whether that's via email, public meeting, whatever that process. Does that clarify it, or did you need something a little more concrete?
Well, not more concrete, but just personalities are gonna not always agree. And I just don't see where this can go forward unless you guys have some kind of an agreement about how it's gonna be governed.
Well, in terms of governed, I don't know necessarily, there needs to be, we're developing the process of how this will work. But in terms of, I think that's part of probably the agreement is, in terms of facilitating this process, is there is an agreement that both parties, whether that's fire chiefs, commissioners, the leadership in the group, do have a commitment to each other to be open, honest, forthright, respectful. I think that was something that was established early on. To be honest, many of you in this room know our history of fire chiefs and boards, and recognizing that personalities can make all the difference in the world. And I think right now, and I will, basically mirror what Tommy has said, we have a good group of commissioners and fire chiefs who are both at the table, who are really open to looking at this and being honest with each other, recognizing can there be good and how will this work to the benefit of both, especially to the citizens. And that's our governing board, is that committee and that commitment to each
Now,
other.
the steering committee isn't making the decisions. What they're just kind of, in a big group, and they're discussing everything. And then they go to the chiefs and the commissioners and say, this is what we've discussed, this is what we believe would be the best thing to do. And then the boards have to make the decisions on that. So the steering committee is just an advisory group, pretty much. They're just kind of saying, this is the path that we think that you need to go down. And then the commissioners and the chiefs, or the commissioners make the choice and let the chiefs know what to do. Yes, sir.
But one thing needs to be pointed out. They make recommendations. The public is what has to vote on this. Everybody that's in both districts has to approve this process. They only come up with a valid issue, and and it's going to be transparent. Whether you agree or don't agree, you can voice your opinions at that point, but the final say-so will be at the ballot.
If it goes to RFA, in which Central Mason elects to come under, the model is they come under the current RFA as it sits, then it would be voter approved, but it would be the citizens of Central Mason who would be voting to approve that. It would not be the RFA, because the RFA exists already in of itself. It would be the Central Mason citizens, current district.
50% plus one.
Ma'am, in the back.
I filled up my paper that was full, so can I just turn it in?
Sure, absolutely. If you just want to hand one of those, Nick, you want to take whatever information she has there? Thank you. Any other questions, ideas, concerns, sir?
Assuming the two largest districts in the county decide to merge, the other 12, some of them may say, me too. You don't want to go through this 12 more times. Is there a way that it can be expedited? You have to go through the whole thing 12 more times?
Yes, sir.
There is, but at the same time, that's a big bite.
I'd like to,
That's a big bite.
We had talked about, Kelly and I had talked about it a couple times, because we feel that there are other smaller districts around District 5, especially around Central Mason, that would like to come into this RFA. But to do it all at once, like you said, would be a pretty good bite off the apple. But to start with, by taking the North Mason RFA and Central Mason Fire and putting them together first, because we both have the medic units that are running. We both have full-time firefighters with unions that each one has to be talked about. Full-time staff in both of them. Where a lot of the smaller districts, they don't have, they don't have medic units running. They don't have unions to worry about. So it wouldn't be that hard after this first two are put together that maybe 3, 6, 11, they could all say they wanted to come in, and that could go on one ballot for each one of them individually. It wouldn't be that much, that hard to do. To start with, we just felt, and we talked about it quite a bit, about, let's get them all, let's make one big one to start with, but then we started thinking about, we got the unions to talk about, and we got the state units to talk about, full-time people.
Some districts have different personal needs, because one of the bigger things also is you have to develop a governing board. Those representatives who are voted to represent as commissioners. We had to develop a different. We came together and had 8, and then had to develop a plan to downscale that, because really the goal is to reduce duplication. So you don't want a board of all of a sudden you've got 20 fire commissioners. So in that planning process, it's what does that look like? And like I said, I think that change can be scary. There are some issues that are complicated, and some districts aren't ready. We have a very big geographical divide here in Mason County, a 101 in Hood Canal. And so what would those, how do you do that? How do you adequately, staff response? Are those folks interested in that? Some of them are, and some of them, it's kind of, again, a big scary thing. But I'm hoping that if we can do this and be successful, make it a very positive process, not only for the districts, but for the citizens, then it would kind of be that domino effect where we could say, look, it wasn't, it wasn't that bad, and it's beneficial that those smaller districts or volunteer districts would see that and be encouraged by the process.
Because I tell you what, we were scared, geez, when we started this with District 2 and 8. And now it's like, and we learned a lot from it. But, it was a big deal to begin with. Now looking back, and it was a learning process, and we still learn from it every day. And but it's a tedious process as well, and long.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that if this goes together, which we think it should, and we think it will benefit everybody, the door's going to be open for other districts that want to, they just have to come to the RFA and say we want in.
But baby steps.
James, again.
In the conversations initially between 2 and 8, what were some of the thorny issues that you had to address?
Ooh, pick me.
I would like.
Tim, you want to take this?
I'd like to address my comments to the commissioners.
Of course, y'all be taking that.
Kelly, you're board chair.
And I'm very bored, no. Tom, I mean, well, Tom and Dan were both District 8 commissioners. And
Yeah, let me add something. I was District 8 for a number of years, and there was a lot of issues between us. I mean, we're all here, and we're all happy with how it turned out. But there were a lot of steps we went through, and I don't want to go through them in detail, but there was history and local needs that we had. District 2 was a full-time fire department, and we were volunteers, and there was all kinds of issues. And, you know, if you start out with the idea, how do we make this work? We got through them, but it is complicated. And when we say, you know, hey, the two of us got together, it makes it seem like it was simple. But we went through a lot of steps and worked it out in good faith, and frankly, it's worked out a lot better for all concerned than I've ever dreamed. There's a real pot of gold at the end of this process, but that's not to understate that there are a lot of local issues that are conflicting and have to be worked out.
One of the big things that some of the volunteers had and the residents had was they were afraid that District 2, being a bigger department, would come in and strong arm everything and just come in and bully. And it's far, you know, it's nothing like that. You know, actually, it's, you know, the response times out there, you know, have gotten better. The community relations out there between the fire department and the community has just grown. I mean, we got people out there at the station all the time during the daytime. And, you know, people stop by and just say thank you out there now. Before, they throw rocks.
I think one of the biggest things when you are a commissioner and you are in this position is we tend to have a lot of protectionism and identity of our community, of our board, of our fire districts. I think one of the biggest things as a commissioner that you can do is go in it with some sense of humility to go, I know what I know, and this is my, you know, this is my district or my board. And I think it's really important to kind of let maybe some of that ego go that you may have, or ownership that you may have in that, and be very open to whatever opportunities may present themselves in consolidating, because that's really what it is. You're wanting to take these fire districts and these boards, and are you willing to, you know, let some of your givens or your knowns, just let them go a little bit to get into that process. And I think that's one of the things, you know, with boards, you have to be willing to let go of some of that history or those biases and say, we as a board are going to, you know, be better together. We're going to let go of some of the ownership or ego and work together. And let go of some of the past, you know, bad blood and relationships, whether it's commissioners or chiefs or staff, and just say, we want to do this, and I'm willing to be a party of that. It's kind of like any relationship. It's a marriage. Do I want to be right, or do I want the relationship? And sometimes you have to let go of, I just need to be right, because you want to be a part of the process. And that's what I think that we did.
I think that I would agree with what everyone has said just now, and one of the things that was most helpful on the part of all of us as commissioners, and we received help from citizens, was just our having the opportunity to listen and to have lines of communication where, yes, we didn't assume that everything was going to be the same as it was in the past, but we were listening to what people were saying they wanted to get out of it. And so if you're coming to the table as a partner, and everybody's coming as a full partner, then you've got a stake. There's something you're going to get out of it. And that's what That's what we were listening for, and that's what we tried to make happen. And I think a lot of that has happened. So, I'm pleased about that.
Kurt?
So, in the process of 2 and 8 coming together, did you happen to document the hurdles that you had to leap over?
I would put it all in Oliver North Michigan.
Thank you, Joe.
But, if there was a process of documenting, well, we had this big question that we had to resolve, and how you resolved it, it would really help down the road, because all the questions are all the same.
I know that in the RFA process, because it's very different, consolidation merger, an RFA requires that you statutorily have planning committees, you have open public meetings, you document the process. And so I'm sure through, we had, took meeting minutes and everything else in terms of those discussions and that governance structure. I'm sure that we could go back and provide information and meeting minutes. I know I took a lot of them, of what were the big issues.
There's going to be answers there
Right.
for everybody on down the line.
Yes.
It's just not a quick process, so be patient if you ask a question and, you don't get your answer right away, because it will come around.
Some of the issues we went through were unique to District 8 and District 2, so some of the things are important here and some were important to 8. Like the fire department was the center of the community in Tahuya, and it wasn't in Belfair. What do we do about that? We work those kind of things out. And so whatever unique issues District 5 has, the hope is we work them out.
Anything else? Sir?
Chief Bakken stated that District 2 and District 5 do the redundant services, about the same thing. And if that's true, why is District 2 $1.6 million in the green and District 5 in the hole? And who's going to pay off the debt?
That's out of my realm.
Well, that's obviously one of the issues that we work out. I mean, we don't have all the answers here today, but
Well, that's a big problem right there.
I see it as a problem too. And
Belfair and Tahuya have been very well supported over the years by the community around it. And the relationship with the community and the support, and the tax levies and tax dollars come in. I think our tax dollars are a little higher, aren't they?
And there's not going to be no quick fix of the problem. It's going to take time, it's going to take years, and it's going to take some patience. And that's one thing that, it's going to take a lot of patience on our end and also on the public's end as well. So I can't stress enough on patience.
Well, sometimes bigger sound better. I think Sheldon thought that too.
And like we said, we understand that there are fiscal issues, and that we're going to have to probably look at all of those. There's more than, one way to skin a cat. I know that there'll probably be different financial models, and I'm sure that, Central Mason can speak to that, of what will this look like to, ensure that at the end of the day, that the taxpayers, that, we are fiscally responsible to both districts. You want to cap onto that?
No, it's covered.
Dave?
Central Mason provides fire and EMS service to the city. Is the city here?
I know that we have contacted and notified them, and they are aware of this process. I don't believe they're here this evening, but they are aware of what's going on. We made that known to them very early on. I guess I don't think anything's going to change with contracts, but it would definitely, it's going to have to be part of the conversation.
Kelly, I didn't catch, I came a little bit late.
Sure.
The dispatching portion to the county, does it all originate in Central Mason?
Dispatch, MACECOM stands alone. It's not through Central Mason at all. MACECOM is a standalone government entity. It's
Right.
almost like a fire district.
Okay.
But MACECOM, it would not have no impact on that. We
Okay.
are a user each fire district, along with other districts and law enforcement, are users and board members of the MACOM board, but we don't dispatch through them.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
It's a separate entity.
It's
but
a complete separate entity.
I would like, somewhere down the road, I really support this concept of consolidation or merging, whatever you want to call it. The key to it is a strong dispatch center that can utilize the closest forces concept. For the general public out here, if they get, say, in a car accident, they don't really care which district or which fire authority it comes from. They just want somebody to come. And that's the bottom line. I really appreciate you folks getting together this evening, and I wish you it's going to work.
Part of
I want to see it work.
Part of the history on that is District 5 years ago had their own dispatch center, and they contracted out to a lot of the smaller districts. And then you had Shellcom downtown that had their dispatch center, and they contracted to some of the districts, some of the areas. And about 7 years ago, I'm one of the original members on that MACOM board. And we sat down together and said, one of the first things that have to be done in any kind of consolidation is to get the dispatching together. And that's what we did. We took Shellcom, MACOM, put them together. It's been running for 7 years now as MACOM, one dispatch center that dispatches the RFA, dispatches, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the 14 fire districts, Squaxin Island, the Sheriff's Department, the Police Department. They're all together. Who now live out the other Indian?
To me, it's not much different. Well, I know there's differences, but law enforcement is all, they come from wherever they need to. It should be the same with the fire and the EMS. So I appreciate your effort.
And that's exactly it. Folks, when you call 911, you don't care what color rigs show up, you just want somebody to be there. And that, in the big picture conceptually, we know there's a lot of details, but that's where we would like to see the fire service go. We have one sheriff's office. We only have one incorporated, city in Mason County, which is very unique in the rest. There's all other municipalities. We have one. So we're slowly wanting to grow, the fire service to where we aren't this, small little pockets responding, that we are a bigger service providing a better service. I had a question I saw.
Is MACOM paid by the fire districts, or is it paid by the state of Washington, or is it paid by the taxpayer?
All of that. MACOM has, I was actually on the MACOM board up until May, also with Now Commissioner Bennett is there, thank you. No, MACOM is actually made up of, there's state E911 dollars from like your phone lines, your cell phones. There are user fees, which are fees paid by every fire district and law enforcement agency. And then there's also the 1/10 of 1%, which is 911 sales tax. So there's at least 3 different revenue sources that fund the MACOM 911 center.
So how do you pay them now that you're one district instead of 2? 8 and 2.
The MACOM board actually sets, with the board, legislative board, they set those user fees, usually based on call volume or contracts. BICMO is also a partner, so
by combining, you upped your costs on that.
We would have to readdress that. You'd have to look at how, what the call volume would be, and the cost, because you don't want to undermine your 911 center, because you want to make sure that people come. But there are 3 different funding measures.
It wouldn't necessarily up the cost because to the districts themselves and because what do you guys run? 3,000 calls a year. We run about 5,000. So we're paying to the dispatch center to run those 5,000 calls. What it is, $14 a call or something like that, and they're paying the same thing, $14 a call. It would just be if we combined between the 2 of us, we'd be paying the $14 a call for 8,000 calls, which is the same thing.
The money be coming in from 3 units or more instead of just 2 there and 1 here.
Will you recalculate, I mean, it's still based on call volume, it's a cost per call, so it's still almost stays the same. Any other questions? Hearing none. Anything else in closing from, we're here an hour, I always know people's, attention span by an hour, everybody gets a little tired.
I just encourage everybody to put their email address back there if you want to be informed and keep up with every time there's a meeting, we'll let you know what's going on.
Good luck.
Yes, ma'am.
Kelly, I was here when the two of you were merging, and from a citizen's point of view is they came in as two different districts, and I'm hearing these people coming in with the same comments we had at that time. But over time and all the meetings, you could sit as a citizen and listen to them, and they became one board automatically. And they were inviting the community into the questions. And it was, each meeting you could see the progression and how much progress was being made. And all our ideas and our thoughts as citizens were ones that were also on the minds of the commissioners. But everybody came together as a group and worked together for that one thing.
Thank you. We're trying hard to do that.
Does District 5 have a citizens advisory committee or something similar to what we have?
Who's we? I don't know what we.
Well, in North Mason, we have whoever wants to be involved with the fire department as far as overseeing, keeping up on what's happening, and giving feedback directly to the chief and therefore to the board. We meet about once every 2 months for an hour or so, just to hash things out so we're kept abreast. Do you have something similar going on?
We don't at this time.
Because I was going to suggest if you do, that you ought to join, the two entities ought to join together so we can hash things out too.
Sometimes I wish we did, but I've been doing this for 15 years, and probably 85% of the commissioners' meetings that I've attended, there's not one person from the public. It's always, if something sounds bad, then they'll show up, but otherwise it'd be nice to have some community interest in all this.
Well, that's something I think we can think about, Herb, and one of the things that happened, we've had a citizen advisory committee since, I believe, 2007 in Fire District 2. And then when Fire District 2 and Fire District 8 came together, we continued that citizen advisory committee. And this is a committee that has, can come to a meeting and hear what the latest is that's going on in the fire districts or the regional fire authority, and offer recommendations, offer input. It's advisory only, but that information goes back to the board. When the two fire districts came together and formed the RFA, we decided instead of holding those citizen committee meetings in Belfair, they were then held at Collins Lake, which was halfway between Cahuilla and Belfair. And people from both communities have attended. They're not really huge meetings. I'd say an average is what, about 8 to 10 people at most. But it does give people an opportunity to ask questions, and then I send out the minutes following those meetings, and then some people have questions sometimes regarding those minutes. If people eventually, if this goes forward and people eventually wanted to have a CAC that represented a larger entity, that would be something to discuss.
District 3.
Sir, did you have a question or did you have a comment?
Did you say eight? Eight people attended the meeting at Town Lake?
We've had as many as 35 when
Depending on the
topics,
issue.
yeah, depending on the issue, we've put on averages.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when it comes to people's taxes, they should be concerned about.
That's exactly when folks start showing up. We want a forum available for our citizens. You know, a lot of times maybe, you know, many of the board meetings, they're business meetings, we're discussing things, and, you know, you have your public comment, but the Citizens Advisory Committee, and Brooke chairs that, it's an opportunity for a commissioner and the chief to be present. So it's more of an informal education opportunity and a more comfortable setting that you can ask a lot of questions, get the input, and not be there during a business board meeting. And that's why we have it available. And there's, of course, there's, you know, times where there's not much going on, but maybe there's something going on in the community, an election, and it's a really great, you know, medium to have that exchange.
I was gonna say, we have a commissioner from Tahuya, Bev Patrias.
She's still with us? Usually she's in person, but she's...
She co-chairs.
It's the new type of commissions.
All right.
Yay.
You hear that.
So you have 6 commissioners, or do you have 5?
6.
So it hasn't,
We have until May to get down to 5.
and is there state law on how many commissioners of fire?
No, you can, with the RFA, you can create your governing board and set that. You try not to have it too long, but you can set it.
We had 8. That did it. Now we're down to 6.
Yeah, there was 5 in District 2 and 3 in Tahuya when they first came together, so we're down to 6 now.
We lost one here recently, so
Well, if there are no other questions, I would like to thank everyone in the audience, both boards for attending this evening, and we look forward to hearing more from each other and to you folks as we go through the process.
What time we'll see?